I didn't lose her, I got audited. When Maya walked out, she didn't just choose another man, she chose an upgrade package, richer, louder, better. I watched her pack my toothbrush in with her perfume by mistake, like the last joke I wasn't in on. 2 weeks later, the better man sent a smug, misaddressed email that landed in my inbox like a receipt. He'd poached our client using my own deck she'd helped format at my kitchen table. I swallowed humiliation and did what accountants do when the numbers don't add up. I opened a folder and started a file. Backups. Metadata. Access logs. A dull ache turned into a quiet ledger of facts. I didn't chase. I built. And when the tide finally turned, it didn't look like revenge. It looked like onboarding paperwork with my name on the signature line, and hers on the employee line, eyes fixed on the company logo I designed alone. Before we dive into the story, tell me in the comments which country you're watching this from. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and it helps me connect with you all around the world. My name is Evan Reed, 31 years old, male, and until last year I was a forensic accountant at a mid-sized consultancy firm in Chicago. Most people think accountant means I spend my life balancing spreadsheets. The truth is a little darker. My specialty was following the trails people didn't want followed, mismatched invoices, doctored receipts, cash that slipped between the cracks of midnight transactions. I lived in the gray margins where numbers stop behaving and someone always has something to hide. What I didn't expect was to end up investigating my own life. It started quietly, the way most betrayals do, not with a scream, but with a sigh. Maya, my girlfriend of 5 years, was packing an overnight bag. She said she needed space. She didn't slam doors or accuse me of anything. Instead, she folded her clothes too neatly, like she was leaving a hotel, not a relationship. Her perfume lingered in the air, cloying and familiar, and when she picked up my toothbrush by mistake and slipped it into her bag, I realized how easily I was being erased. I asked her if there was someone else. She denied it with practiced calm. I didn't believe her, but I didn't press. Forensic work had trained me not to argue with denials. You just file them away like placeholders until the numbers tell the truth. 2 weeks later, the numbers spoke. It came in the form of an email. A client I had been pursuing for months, Walden Tech, had suddenly pulled out of talks with my firm. Disappointing, but not unusual. I thought nothing of it until I received a misaddressed message in my inbox. It was meant for someone else, but fate, or negligence, redirected it to me. The subject line read, "Great work landing Walden, drinks on me tonight." The sender? The man Maya had once described as just a friend, a venture capitalist named Damon West. The email included an attachment, a slide deck presentation. My slide deck. The formatting was distinct, down to the header style I'd built from scratch on a sleepless night. The file properties revealed the creation trail, edited on Maya's laptop, timestamped at 2:17 a.m. the same night she moved her things out of our apartment. That was the moment the floor dropped out from under me. She hadn't just left me for another man. She had taken my work with her, gift-wrapped it, and delivered it into Damon's hands like a dowry. They hadn't just betrayed me personally, they had robbed me professionally. I stared at the email for nearly an hour. My chest felt hollow, like I was inhaling smoke instead of air. I wanted to forward it to my boss, to expose them immediately, but instinct stopped me. In my line of work, the first rule is simple: never move too fast. Numbers settle if you give them time. If you wait, inconsistencies widen into cracks. Cracks widen into confessions. So I opened a folder on my desktop. I labeled it Archive. Inside it, I saved the email, the attachment, and screenshots of the file properties. Then I opened a spreadsheet, not for revenge, not yet. Just a ledger, because ledgers don't lie. I logged the first entry. Date, March 12th. Evidence, misaddressed email, Walden Tech Deck. Source, Damon West Maya, via laptop timestamp. From that moment, I wasn't just Evan the accountant. I was Evan the investigator. Days passed, and Maya didn't call. Damon's name started appearing in industry newsletters, boasting about his innovative approach and newly acquired clients. Every headline felt like a jab. My firm began to notice the losses, whispers circling about whether competitors were undercutting us. No one suspected the real leak. Not yet. But I knew. And more importantly, I had the receipts. The trigger wasn't heartbreak, it was arithmetic. She left me for a better man, but the numbers didn't add up. And when the math is wrong, I don't look away. I dig. When you spend years tracing fraud, you learn a dangerous habit: you don't let anything go. A stray receipt, an unexplained timestamp, an access log that doesn't match working hours, it all gets filed. Not because you know it's important in the moment, but because someday it might be the missing digit that makes the whole equation balance. That's what I did with Maya and Damon. The night I received that misaddressed email, I didn't rage or drink or smash my phone against the wall. I opened a folder. Not metaphorically. Literally. Archive sat on my desktop like a quiet vault, and into it went every scrap of evidence I could gather. I started small. Screenshots of Damon's LinkedIn posts bragging about Walden Tech. PDFs of industry newsletters that credited him with innovative strategies that looked suspiciously like the slide layouts I had designed. I pulled cached versions of Walden's website updates, noting the exact phrases from my deck replicated word for word in their new promotional copy. Next came the timestamps. File histories are my bread and butter, and Maya had always been careless about digital hygiene. Her laptop had been synced with our shared cloud drive for years. She thought that moving out meant cutting ties. She forgot that deletion is never really deletion. Every time she uploaded something from Damon's apartment, traces remained. I exported activity logs, late night access, downloads, edits. The pattern was obvious. The same nights she claimed she was working late were the same nights my files walked out the digital door. Each entry went into my ledger. March 14th, LinkedIn boast, screenshot, cached copy March 17th, Walden Tech website update, matching phrasing, timestamp pulled March 20th, shared drive activity log, Maya login, 1:42 a.m., download flagged. The archive began to grow heavy, not in size, megabytes are weightless, but in implication. Meanwhile, at the office, pressure mounted. My boss asked why Walden Tech had ghosted us. I swallowed the truth and blamed budget restructuring. He frowned but moved on. Forensic work had taught me patience, but it also taught me silence. You don't cry foul until you have the whole case lined up like dominoes. One weak piece, and the whole thing falls apart. By the end of the month, I had over 30 entries in my ledger. 30 points of contact between Maya, Damon, and stolen intellectual property. I cross-referenced IP addresses, matching her laptop's location to Damon's building downtown. I noted the shifts in her social media presence, private posts, deleted tags, curated appearances that looked less like romance and more like a rebranding campaign. The betrayal was personal, yes, but the pattern was professional. This wasn't just a girlfriend leaving me. It was corporate theft carried out in heels and practiced smiles. Still, I told no one. Not my boss, not my colleagues, not even my closest friend Mark, who would have driven straight to Damon's office with a baseball bat if he knew. That wasn't justice, that was noise. Noise gets you arrested. Receipts get you results. So I waited. And I kept stacking. Some nights, I'd stare at the archive folder until my eyes blurred. I'd hover over the files, hand trembling, tempted to forward the entire package to my boss. But every time, I'd stop. It wasn't ready. The numbers weren't lined up tight enough. Instead, I opened a blank document and wrote 3 words across the top. Do not rush. It became a mantra. Every time anger burned in my chest, every time I saw Damon smirk on a press release, every time Maya's name appeared in a file path at 3 a.m., I repeated it. Do not rush. Because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't trying to win her back. I wasn't trying to humiliate him. I was building something else, something sturdier, sharper. Every ledger has a balance point. I just hadn't reached mine yet. The hardest part of building a case isn't the evidence, it's the waiting. Evidence is numbers, timestamps, logs. Cold things. Waiting, though, that's human. And humans break before numbers do. By April, the strain was showing. Walden Tech wasn't the only client we lost. 2 more deals fell apart in ways that felt eerily familiar, proposals vanishing from inboxes, competitors showing up with oddly tailored pitches. I couldn't prove it yet, but the rhythm matched. Someone was bleeding us from the inside. I kept my silence. Every day at work I played the role of the tired, overworked associate. Yeah, tough break, I'd say when someone complained about Walden. Market's rough this quarter. I smiled at coworkers, took the stairs instead of the elevator, forced myself to laugh at office jokes. On the surface, I was functioning. Underneath, my archive folder grew heavier. It wasn't easy. Nights were worse. I'd scroll through Damon's Instagram, cocktails, rooftop dinners, new clients announced like trophies. Maya was always there, sometimes in the frame, sometimes hidden in reflections of glass or the edge of a shadow. She looked polished, styled, curated. Not the woman I'd lived with for 5 years. Not the woman who once wore my oversized hoodie and fell asleep on the couch while I triple-checked audit trails. Each post was a knife, but I refused to bleed publicly. Silence was my shield. If I exploded too soon, I'd look bitter, unstable, jealous. But silence, that was strategy. Silence meant I could keep watching, keep collecting. At the office, rumors began swirling. Management suspected leaks. A few junior staff got side-eyed in meetings. One even quit, claiming the stress was unbearable. I said nothing. I wasn't ready to burn what I had. A ledger with missing entries is just noise. Meanwhile, my rent was due. The raise I'd been counting on vanished with the firm's shrinking revenue. My boss cut overtime pay, and suddenly my careful financial planning collapsed. I sold my gaming rig, pawned an old watch my father gave me, and cut my meals down to rice and eggs. It wasn't pride. It was survival. If I stayed afloat quietly, no one would notice the fire I was stoking in the background. I think that's when I learned the power of starving in silence. Every sacrifice, every skipped meal, every restless night, felt like an investment in the case I was building. My coworkers thought I was beaten down. In truth, I was sharpening my blade. There's a rhythm to these things. You stack the evidence, then you wait for the crack. People like Damon always crack. Their confidence grows sloppy, their arrogance makes them careless. They believe no one is watching because no one is making noise, and that's when they leave fingerprints. One Friday evening, that fingerprint came. Damon posted a celebratory story, champagne, skyline, his arm around a mystery partner. What he didn't notice was the laptop open on the table behind them. My deck, unmistakable, glowing on the screen. The camera flash had caught it just enough, my font, my colors, my title page. I screenshotted it instantly. Filed it under April 28th. Added notes. Proof wasn't just falling into my lap, it was flaunting itself in plain sight. And still, I stayed silent. Coworkers complained, clients fled, my bank account dwindled. But silence was the strategy. Because when I finally moved, I wanted everything lined up in a sequence no one could deny. Justice isn't loud. It waits. If there's one thing my profession drilled into me, it's this: numbers don't lie, but people do. And when people lie, they leave receipts. Maybe not the paper kind with ink and tax codes, but digital fingerprints, timestamps, metadata, access logs. Receipts no one thinks about until they're staring down the barrel of an audit. By May, my archive folder had grown into a monster. What began as a few screenshots had turned into a labyrinth of subfolders: emails, drive logs, screenshots, IP records, social proof, and one I labeled simply bait. Each night, after work, I combed through it like a detective pacing a crime board. I didn't tack photos on a wall with red string, that's for movies. I had spreadsheets, pivot tables, and hash checks. Cold precision. I started with the drive logs. Maya's laptop had been sloppy, syncing to the cloud even after she moved out. That gave me timestamps: 1:42 a.m., 3:17 a.m., 11:59 p.m. irregular hours that matched Damon's party lifestyle more than professional work. I cross-referenced those with IP addresses, and sure enough, the majority resolved to a single location downtown, Damon's high-rise condo. Then came the screenshots. Damon's public boasting was a goldmine. He'd brag about securing innovative contracts with language ripped straight from my proposals. I captured everything, saved it with dates, and compared his posts against my file versions. Each one lined up like a mirror image. But the real jackpot came from what I called social proof. People are careless online, and Damon was no exception. Tagged photos revealed patterns: client dinners, casual hangouts, rooftop networking events. In one, he posed with Walden Tech executives while holding a folder I recognized, my draft proposal, complete with the sticky note color tabs Maya insisted on using when she helped me proofread. The edges of those tabs were neon pink. No one else in the industry color-coded like that. That went into the ledger with a note. May 10th, Walden dinner photo. Evidence: physical folder with identifiable sticky notes. Every entry hardened the picture. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was a case file. Still, something was missing. I had circumstantial evidence, a mountain of it, but what I needed was a smoking gun, a piece of data that could not be explained away. That's where the bait folder came in. I created a decoy presentation. The bones were solid, but I salted it with deliberate markers, false stats, made-up projections, and a fictitious client name that didn't exist. Then I left it sitting in a shared folder under an innocuous name, Q2 Draft, Internal. I didn't announce it. I didn't share it. I just waited. 2 weeks later, Damon made a post congratulating himself on a potential new partnership with that same fictitious client name. He even quoted one of the false stats, word for word. I remember laughing when I saw it. Not a joyful laugh, a sharp, hollow sound that scraped out of my chest. He'd walked straight into the trap, and he hadn't even noticed the bait was glowing neon. I documented it meticulously, screenshots, metadata, and a local copy of the bait file with its hash value, proving it hadn't been altered since the day I created it. Forensic gold. The archive was no longer just a folder. It was a weapon. But weapons are useless without timing. I still didn't rush. My boss was growing suspicious, the firm bleeding clients faster than we could replace them. Yet I held back. Because when I finally exposed Damon and Maya, I wanted it to be airtight. No doubts. No wiggle room. Just the slow, crushing inevitability of a balance sheet that refuses to reconcile. Receipt season, I muttered one night, staring at the glow of my monitor. It wasn't anger anymore. It was accounting. And accounts always settle. There's a saying in my line of work: documents can be forged, signatures can be faked, but timestamps don't love you back. They're cold. Mechanical. They don't care who you are, what store you're selling, or how charming your smile looks in a boardroom. They just sit there in the metadata, silent and immovable. I knew if I could pin one undeniable timestamp to Maya, the entire house of cards would collapse. And that proof came from the very slide deck Damon had paraded around like a trophy. The misaddressed email that started all this still sat at the top of my archive folder. I opened the deck again, this time drilling into the version history. People think save as erases the past, but every file tells a story if you know where to look. Creation date. Last modified. Device name. User credentials. And there it was, March 12, 2:17 a.m. The file had been created on Maya's laptop, under her user profile. That was the same night she moved her belongings out of our apartment, down to the toothbrush she mistakenly packed. While I was lying awake in a half-empty bed, she was feeding Damon my work line by line. I stared at that timestamp until the room blurred. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a timestamped confession. Cold, objective, irrefutable. I took screenshots from every angle: the version history, the device ID, the user credentials. Then I exported the metadata into a PDF, digitally signed it with a hash, and stored it on an encrypted drive. If anyone ever challenged the authenticity, I could prove the chain of custody was unbroken. That's how airtight I needed this to be. But one timestamp wasn't enough. I dug deeper. I pulled logs from the shared drive, comparing her login activity against the firm's internal records. March 12 wasn't an outlier, it was part of a pattern. She'd accessed multiple client folders after hours, always around the same time, always from Damon's building. I cross-referenced these with my phone records. At 2:20 a.m. that night, Maya had texted me, "Hope you're sleeping okay." A breadcrumb of intimacy laid over the top of professional theft. I saved it. Not because I needed it for the case, it was useless in court, but because it reminded me how easily people lie with their mouths while their machines quietly rat them out. The weight of the archive shifted that night. Until then, it was evidence that looked suspicious, compelling, maybe even damning, but still circumstantial. With the timestamp, it became something else, proof beyond denial. And with proof, strategy changes. I began thinking not just about collecting, but about deployment. How to use this. How to corner them so cleanly that no excuse, no plea, no spin could undo the math. I pictured Damon's smirk curdling into confusion as the walls closed in. I pictured Maya realizing the same carelessness that once made her charming had also written her confession in invisible ink across every file she touched. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I just logged the entry in my ledger, the same as always. March 12, 2:17 a.m., creation timestamp on Walden Tech Deck. Device, Maya's laptop. User, Maya. That's the thing about timestamps. They don't care about heartbreak, or betrayal, or the years you wasted on someone. They don't love you back. But they don't lie either. And that makes them the sharpest weapon you can wield. Evidence is power, but power means nothing if you can't maneuver someone into a position where they have no choice but to choke on it. That's where traps come in. In my world, we call it compliance theater, the illusion of opportunity hiding a stage-managed ambush. By June, Damon's firm was wobbling. The leaks I'd been tracking weren't isolated, they were systemic. They'd poached too many clients too fast, promising deliverables they couldn't actually produce. I watched from the sidelines as cracks formed, late reports, half-baked rollouts, whispers on industry forums about sloppy execution. Damon was good at the schmooze, but charisma can't backfill incompetence. That was my moment. I posted a job listing. Not under my own name, under the banner of a shell LLC I had quietly registered months before. The company looked legitimate enough, a boutique consultancy with a vague but enticing specialty. I drafted the description carefully, mirroring the kind of projects Maya used to brag about handling. The hook was irresistible: high salary, remote flexibility, chance to lead accounts. Within 48 hours, her application landed in the inbox. Resume polished, cover letter full of buzzwords. She probably thought she was being proactive, diversifying in case Damon's ship started sinking. What she didn't realize was that she was stepping directly into my theater. I built the interview process like a funnel. Round 1, a simple phone call with a recruiter profile I controlled. Round 2, a skills test, conveniently seated with proprietary markers I could track if they surfaced elsewhere. And round 3, the final act, was an NDA. Not just any NDA. A custom draft I'd written myself, tucked inside boilerplate language. It bound the applicant not only to confidentiality, but to acknowledgement. Candidate affirms no prior engagement in the unauthorized transfer, distribution, or use of intellectual property belonging to third-party entities. Legal landmines disguised as paperwork. When Maya signed it, I nearly laughed. She probably skimmed, saw confidentiality agreement, and clicked without thinking. But that signature meant one thing: she'd boxed herself in. If she tried to deny her past theft later, this document would corner her. She had voluntarily attested to a standard she'd already violated. The skills test sealed it. I fed her prompts laced with bait statistics, different from the earlier ones. 2 weeks later, one of Damon's new pitches contained those exact numbers. My markers, my fingerprints, right there in his glossy PDF. Proof she was still siphoning ideas, still serving him my work under the guise of competence. This time, though, the chain of custody was flawless. File hashes. Email headers. Signed NDA. It wasn't just circumstantial anymore, it was a full noose. And yet, when the final interview invitation went out, she accepted without hesitation. Maybe she was tired of Damon's volatility. Maybe she was chasing stability. Or maybe she just didn't recognize my name on the letterhead because I'd hidden it so deep under corporate shell layers. Either way, she walked in willingly. I sat across from her in a rented conference room, disguised as neutral ground. She smiled, poised, professional, clearly rehearsed. For a brief second, I saw the Maya I used to know, the woman who teased me for color-coding receipts, who stole my hoodies, who once swore she'd never betray my trust. Then I slid the NDA across the table. Her pen hovered for a second. Then she signed. No hesitation. No suspicion. Just ink on paper, the sound of a trap closing shut. Compliance theater. And she had performed her role perfectly. Every con lives in the shadows. Damon and Maya had thrived because their theft was quiet, dressed up as coincidence and charm. The only way to kill that kind of parasite is sunlight, clean, public, undeniable. After Maya signed the NDA, my case file was bulletproof. Metadata, file hashes, IP logs, screenshots, the bait decks, and now her own written acknowledgement of confidentiality. I could have gone to the police, but theft of intellectual property lives in a swamp of civil litigation, slow-moving and easy to stall. If I wanted results, I needed a cleaner stage. That stage was HR. Damon's firm, though flashy, had investors and compliance officers, people who didn't care about his charisma, only about liability. So I packaged the evidence into a whistleblower packet. Everything was documented, cross-referenced, footnoted. I stripped emotion from the report until it read like an autopsy: dates, times, file paths, login IDs. A surgeon's cut, not a lover's wound. Then I leaked it. Not to tabloids, not to gossip blogs. To a journalist who specialized in corporate accountability, someone who valued receipts over rumors. And I sent a copy to Damon's board of investors with a simple subject line: for your compliance review. The silence that followed was deafening. 2 weeks later, I saw the ripples. Damon's LinkedIn went quiet. No more rooftop champagne, no more victory laps. Rumors surfaced of emergency board meetings. A compliance officer from his firm reached out to ask a few clarifying questions. I didn't answer directly, I referred them back to the packet. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Then came the email from Maya. Just 3 words: did you do this? I didn't reply. Instead, I watched as sunlight poured into their shadows. The journalist published a piece, clinical, devastating, about misappropriation of intellectual property in boutique consultancies. No names were mentioned, but anyone in the industry could read between the lines. Damon's firm bled clients overnight. Investors froze funding. Employees quietly updated their resumes. And HR? They did what HR always does when faced with liability: they protected the company, not the culprits. Damon was forced to step back for personal reasons. Maya, according to whispers I picked up from contacts, was released after performance review. Clean phrasing for a messy fall. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Sunlight had done the work. For years, I had built cases for clients who never knew my name, exposing fraudsters who thought they were untouchable. Now I had done it for myself. And it worked the same way it always did: quiet documentation, patient timing, then a scalpel of truth slicing open the infection for everyone to see. The irony was almost too much to bear. Maya had left me for a better man, convinced he was her ladder to power and security. But ladders built on stolen rungs collapse fast. And when they fell, it wasn't me shouting from the rooftops. It was the evidence whispering in the right ears. Justice, in the end, didn't roar. It glowed. The collapse came faster than I expected. Damon's empire had always been hollow, a glass tower built on borrowed decks and borrowed charm. Once the investors pulled back and the clients fled, the facade shattered. Whispers spread in the industry, first about compliance issues, then about leadership restructuring. Those are corporate euphemisms for free fall. Maya went quiet online. Her Instagram, once a highlight reel of rooftop parties and champagne glasses, went dark. The last photo stayed pinned at the top, her in a sequined dress, Damon's arm around her waist, both smiling like they'd stolen the future. After that, nothing. I didn't expect to hear from her again. But then the email came. Subject line: exploring opportunities. It was polished, professional, detached. She had seen a posting for my consultancy, no longer just a shell company, but a growing firm I'd quietly been building on the side with 2 former colleagues who trusted me. She wanted to leverage her experience and contribute to a team focused on integrity and results. Integrity. The word almost made me choke. I read the email twice, then 3 times. She didn't know. Or maybe she did, and she was gambling that I wouldn't care. Either way, it didn't matter. This was the reversal I'd been waiting for. I invited her to an interview. Neutral ground, same rented conference space where she had signed the NDA. When she walked in, her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Evan," she said smoothly, as if bumping into an old friend at a coffee shop. "Didn't realize this was your firm." I didn't answer. I slid the offer letter across the table. It was generous on paper: competitive salary, full benefits, a title that sounded impressive. But buried in the contract were conditions. Strict compliance audits. Clauses about intellectual property. Non-compete language so airtight it could suffocate. And the final kicker: acknowledgement that all prior materials she had worked with under Damon's firm were now considered tainted and could not be used in any future capacity. She read it carefully. Her poker face was good, but I could see the tightening around her jaw, the way her fingers tapped the pen. She understood the trap. Signing meant stability, but also shackles. Refusing meant unemployment in an industry that already viewed her as radioactive. After a long silence, she signed. The pen scratched against the paper like the last note of a symphony. I took the contract, slid it into my folder, and nodded once. Professional. Detached. No triumph, no bitterness. Just business. Because that's what it had always been. She thought leaving me was about love. Damon thought stealing my work was about power, but the truth was simpler. It was about numbers, ledgers, balance sheets. And balance sheets always reconcile. When she left the room, I sat alone with the folder in front of me. The same woman who once packed my toothbrush by mistake now carried my logo on her paychecks. She worked for me. Not out of love. Not out of loyalty. Out of necessity. And necessity is the cruelest master of all. Justice doesn't always look like a gavel slamming down. Sometimes it looks like paperwork quietly filed, signatures inked without fanfare, and contracts that bind tighter than handcuffs. That was Maya's reality after she signed the offer letter. She came to work on time. She dressed professionally. She completed assignments without complaint. To the casual observer, nothing seemed unusual, just another hire finding her footing. But beneath the surface, the net was already cinching tight. Every project she touched was monitored. Not by cameras or spies, but by systems. I had compliance software logging keystrokes, timestamps, and file paths. If she so much as copied a line of text outside the approved environment, it would flag red. She probably never noticed. She thought she was rebuilding her career. In truth, she was walking a narrow corridor I had designed. Clients returned to me slowly. Some had drifted away during Damon's noisy rise, now they circled back after his fall. I never mentioned why they left or why they returned. I didn't need to. The industry already whispered about his implosion. I just presented myself as steady, reliable, trustworthy. Numbers don't gloat, they balance. Maya worked quietly under my banner, bound by clauses she couldn't break. She knew it too. I saw it in the way she avoided eye contact in meetings, the way her posture stiffened when I entered a room. She wasn't trapped by chains. She was trapped by her own signature, her own need for survival. As for Damon, he faded. Investors cut him off, clients abandoned him, and his once flashy firm withered into a skeleton crew. Last I heard, he was pitching consulting services to small startups, trying to scrape by on the remnants of his reputation. No rooftop parties. No victory posts. Just a man reduced to silence by the very sunlight he once basked in. I didn't interfere. I didn't need to. Consequences had found him without my hand guiding the blade. The most satisfying part wasn't revenge, it was the quietness of it all. No shouting, no public humiliation, no grand declarations. Just the steady inevitability of accountability, like gravity pulling everything back into place. Some nights I wondered if Maya realized how carefully I had built the cage she now lived in. Did she know the offer letter had been less an opportunity and more a sentence? Did she understand that every keystroke was a reminder that trust, once broken, is never freely given again? I never asked. It didn't matter. What mattered was that the ledger was balanced. Damon's theft was exposed. Maya's betrayal was contained. And my future was no longer defined by what they took from me, but by what I built in their absence. Quiet accountability, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but makes history, for the people caught in its net. By the end of the year, my life no longer resembled the wreckage I'd crawled out of. My consultancy had grown lean but strong. The clients I'd lost to Damon trickled back, one by one, relieved to work with someone who valued precision over flash. My reputation wasn't loud, but it was steady, and in business, steadiness is worth more than champagne toasts. Maya remained an employee. Not a partner, not a confidant, not even a colleague I trusted. Just an employee. She did her work, collected her paycheck, and avoided my gaze. In another life, I might have pitied her. But pity is just another form of debt, and I was done carrying balances that weren't mine. Sometimes she lingered after meetings, as if searching for the courage to speak. Maybe to apologize, maybe to explain. But I never invited it. Words don't undo signatures. Sorry doesn't erase metadata. Love doesn't reconcile a ledger. And Damon? He had become a ghost in the industry. The kind of name people mention only in whispers, a cautionary tale about arrogance and shortcuts. I didn't need to finish him, his own habits did the job. Sunlight, once again, proved lethal. Looking back, I realized the story was never about heartbreak. Not really. Heartbreak is personal, messy, irrational. What happened to me was cleaner than that. It was arithmetic. A woman left me for a better man, and together they stole my work. In response, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I opened a folder, started a ledger, and let the numbers tell the truth. And the truth settled like it always does, quietly, inevitably. When Maya sits in meetings now, typing notes, I sometimes catch her glancing at the company logo printed on the header of every document. My name is built into that logo. She sees it. She knows. She left me for a better man. Now she works for me. And in the end, that's the balance sheet that matters.